Jewel and I come up from the field, following the path in single file. Although I am 15 feet ahead of him, anyone watching us from the cotton house can see Jewel's frayed and broken straw hat a full head above my own. The path runs straight as a plumb line, worn smooth by feet and baked brick-hard by July, between the green rows of laid-by cotton, to the cotton house in the center of the field, where it turns and circles the cotton house at 4 soft right angles and goes on across the field again, worn so by feet in fading precision. The cotton house is of rough logs, from between which the chinking has long fallen. Square, with a broken roof set at a single pitch, it leans in empty and shimmering dilapidation in the sunlight, a single broad window and 2 opposite walls giving onto the approaches of the path. When we reach it, I turn and follow the path which circles the house. Jewel, 15 feet behind me, looking straight ahead, steps in a single stride through the window. Still staring straight ahead, his pale eyes like wood set into his wooden face, he crosses the floor in 4 strides with the rigid gravity of a cigar store. Indian dressed in patched overalls and endued with life from the hips down, and steps in a single stride through the opposite window and into the path again, just as I come around the corner. In single file and 5 feet apart, and Jewel now in front, we go on up the path toward the foot of the bluff. Tull's wagon stands beside the spring, hitched to the rail, the reins wrapped about the seat stanchion. In the wagon bed are 2 chairs. Jewel stops at the spring and takes the gourd from the willow branch and drinks. I pass him and mount the path, beginning to hear Cash's saw. When I reach the top, he has quit sawing. Standing in a litter of chips, he is fitting 2 of the boards together. Between the shadow spaces they are yellow as gold, like soft gold, bearing on their flanks in smooth undulations the marks of the adze blade. A good carpenter, Cash is. He holds the 2 planks on the trestle, fitted along the edges in a quarter of the finished box. He kneels and squints along the edge of them, then he lowers them and takes up the adze. A good carpenter. Addie Bundren could not want a better box to lie in. It will give her confidence and comfort. I go on to the house, followed by the chuck of the adze.
So I saved out the eggs and baked yesterday. The cakes turned out right well. We depend a lot on our chickens. They are good layers, what few we have left after the possums and such. Snakes, too, in the summer. A snake will break up a hen house quicker than anything. So after they were going to cost so much more than Mr. Tull thought, and after I promised that the difference in the number of eggs would make it up, I had to be more careful than ever because it was on my final say-so we took them. We could have stocked cheaper chickens, but I gave my promise, as Miss Loington said when she advised me to get a good breed, because Mr. Tull himself admits that a good breed of cows or hogs pays in the long run. So when we lost so many of them, we couldn't afford to use the eggs ourselves, because I could not have had Mr. Tull chide me when it was on my say-so we took them. So when Miss Loington told me about the cakes, I thought that I could bake them and earn enough at one time to increase the net value of the flock the equivalent of 2 head, and that by saving the eggs out one at a time, even the eggs wouldn't be costing anything. And that week they laid so well that I not only saved out enough eggs above what we had engaged to sell, to bake the cakes with, I had saved enough so that the flour and the sugar and the stove wood would not be costing anything. So I baked yesterday. More careful than ever, I baked in my life. And the cakes turned out right well. But when we got to town this morning, Miss Loington told me the lady had changed her mind and was not going to have the party after all.
She ought to take in those cakes anyway.
Kate says. Well, I say, I reckon she never had no use for them now.
She ought to take in them, but those rich town ladies can change their minds. Poor folks can't.
Riches is nothing in the face of the Lord, for he can see into the heart. Maybe I can sell them at the bazaar Saturday, I say. They turned out real well.
You can't get $2 apiece for them.
Well, it isn't like they cost me anything, I say. I saved them out and swapped a dozen of them for the sugar and flour. It isn't like the cakes cost me anything, as Mr. Tull himself realizes that the eggs I saved were over and beyond what we had engaged to sell, so it was like we had found the eggs or they had been given to us.
She ought to taken those cakes when she same as gave you her word.
Kate says, "The Lord can see into the heart. If it is His will that some folks has different ideas of honesty from other folks, it is not my place to question His decree." I reckon she never had any use for them, I say. They turned out real well, too. The quilt is drawn up to her chin, hot as it is, with only her 2 hands and her face outside. She is propped on the pillow, with her head raised so she can see out the window, and we can hear him every time he takes up the adze or the saw. If we were deaf, we could almost watch her face and hear him, see him. Her face is wasted away so that the bones draw just under the skin in white lines. Her eyes are like 2 candles when you watch them gutter down into the sockets of iron candlesticks. But the eternal and the everlasting salvation and grace is not upon her. They turned out real nice, I say, but not like the cakes Addie used to bake. You can see that girl's washing and ironing in the pillow slip, if ironed it ever was. Maybe it will reveal her blindness to her, laying there at the mercy and the ministration of 4 men and a torn boy girl. There's not a woman in this section could ever bake with Addie Bundren, I say. First thing we know, she'll be up and baking again, and then we won't have any sale for ours at all. Under the quilt she makes no more of a hump than a rail would, and the only way you can tell she is breathing is by the sound of the mattress shucks. Even the hair at her cheek does not move, even with that girl standing right over her, fanning her with the fan. While we watch, she swaps the fan to the other hand without stopping it.
Is she sleeping?
Kate whispers.
"She's just watching Cash yonder,"
The girl says. We can hear the saw in the board. It sounds like snoring. Eula turns on the trunk and looks out the window. Her necklace looks real nice with her red hat. You wouldn't think it only cost 25 cents.
She ought to taken those cakes.
Kate says. I could have used the money real well. But it's not like they cost me anything except the baking. I can tell him that anybody is likely to make a miscue, but it's not all of them that can get out of it without loss, I can tell him. It's not everybody can eat their mistakes, I can tell him. Someone comes through the hall. It is Darl. He does not look in as he passes the door. Eula watches him as he goes on and passes from sight again toward the back. Her hand rises and touches her beads lightly and then her hair. When she finds me watching her, her eyes go blank.
Pa and Vernon are sitting on the back porch. Pa is tilting snuff from the lid of his snuff box into his lower lip, holding the lip outdrawn between thumb and finger. They look around as I cross the porch and dip the gourd into the water bucket and drink.
"Where's Jewel?"
Pa says. When I was a boy, I first learned how much better water tastes when it has set a while in a cedar bucket. Warmish cool, with a faint taste like the hot July wind in cedar trees smells. It has to set at least 6 hours and be drunk from a gourd. Water should never be drunk from metal. And at night it is better still. I used to lie on the pallet in the hall, waiting until I could hear them all asleep so I could get up and go back to the bucket. It would be black, the shelf black, the still surface of the water a round orifice in nothingness, where before I stirred it awake with the dipper, I could see maybe a star or 2 in the bucket, and maybe in the dipper a star or 2 before I drank. After that I was bigger, older. Then I would wait until they all went to sleep so I could lie with my shirt tail up, hearing them asleep, feeling myself without touching myself. Feeling the cool silence blowing upon my parts and wondering if Cash was yonder in the darkness doing it too, had been doing it perhaps for the last 2 years before I could have wanted to, or could have. Pa's feet are badly splayed, his toes cramped and bent and warped, with no toenail at all on his little toes, from working so hard in the wet in homemade shoes when he was a boy. Beside his chair, his brogans sit. They look as though they had been hacked with a blunt axe out of pig iron. Vernon has been to town. I have never seen him go to town in overalls. His wife, they say. She taught school too once. I fling the dipper dregs to the ground and wipe my mouth on my sleeve. It is going to rain before morning, maybe before dark. Down to the barn, I say, harnessing the team. Down there fooling with that horse. he will go on through the barn into the pasture. The horse will not be in sight. He is up there among the pine seedlings in the cool. Jewel whistles once and shrill. The horse snorts, then Jewel sees him, glinting for a gaudy instant among the blue shadows. Jewel whistles again. The horse comes dropping down the slope, stiff-legged, his ears cocking and flicking, his mismatched eyes rolling, and fetches up 20 feet away, broadside on, watching Jewel over his shoulder in an attitude kittenish and alert.
"Come here, sir,"
Jewel says. He moves. Moving that quick, his coat bunching, tongue swirling like so many flames. With tossing mane and tail and rolling eye, the horse makes another short curvetting rush and stops again, feet bunched, watching Jewel. Jewel walks steadily toward him, his hands at his sides. Save for Jewel's legs, they are like two figures carved for a tableau savage in the sun. When Jewel can almost touch him, the horse stands on his hind legs and slashes down at Jewel. Then Jewel is enclosed by a glittering maze of hooves as by an illusion of wings. Among them, beneath the upreared chest, he moves with the flashing limberness of a snake. For an instant, before the jerk comes onto his arms, he sees his whole body earth-free, horizontal, whipping snake umber, until he finds the horse's nostrils and touches earth again. Then they are rigid, motionless, terrific, the horse back thrust on stiffened, quivering legs, with lowered head. Jewel with dug heels, shutting off the horse's wind with one hand, with the other patting the horse's neck in short strokes, myriad, and caressing, cursing the horse with obscene ferocity. They stand in rigid, terrific hiatus, the horse trembling and groaning. Then Jewel is on the horse's back. He flows upward in a stooping swirl like the lash of a whip, his body in mid-air shaped to the horse. For another moment, the horse stands spraddled, with lowered head, before it bursts into motion. They descend the hill in a series of spine-jolting jumps, Jewel high, leech-like on the withers, to the fence where the horse bunches to a scuttering halt again.
"Well, you can quit now if you got a plenty."
Inside the barn, Jewel slides running to the ground before the horse stops. The horse enters the stall, Jewel following. Without looking back, the horse kicks at him, slamming a single hoof into the wall with a pistol-like report. Jewel kicks him in the stomach. The horse arches his neck back, crop-toothed. Jewel strikes him across the face with his fist and slides on to the trough and mounts upon it. Clinging to the hayrack, he lowers his head and peers out across the stall tops and through the doorway. The path is empty. From here he cannot even hear Cash sawing. He reaches up and drags down hay in hurried armsful and crams it into the rack.
"Eat. Get the goddamn stuff out of sight while you got a chance, you puss-gutted bastard. You sweet son of a bitch." It's because he stays out there, right under the window, hammering and sawing on that goddamn box. Where she's got to see him. Where every breath she draws is full of his knocking and sawing, where she can see him saying, "See. See what a good one I am making for you." I told him to go somewhere else. I said, "Good God, do you want to see her in it?" It's like when he was a little boy and she says if she had some fertilizer she would try to raise some flowers, and he taken the bread pan and brought it back from the barn full of dung. And now the mother's sitting there, like buzzards. Waiting, fanning themselves. Because I said if you wouldn't keep on sawing and nailing at it until a man can't sleep even, and her hands laying on the quilt like two of them roots dug up and tried to wash, and you couldn't get them clean. I can see the fan in Dewey Dell's arm. I said if you just let her alone. Sawing and knocking, and keeping the air always moving so fast on her face that when you're tired you can't breathe it, and that goddamn ad's going one lick less. One lick less. One lick less until everybody that passes in the road will have to stop and see it and say what a fine carpenter he is. If it had just been me when Cash fell off of that church, and if it had just been me when Pa laid sick with that load of wood fell on him, it would not be happening with every bastard in the county coming in to stare at her, because if there is a God, what the hell is he for? It would just be me and her on a high hill, and me rolling the rocks down the hill faces and teeth and all, by God, until she was quiet, and not that goddamn ad's going one lick less. One lick less and we could be quiet.
We watch him come around the corner and mount the steps. He does not look at us.
You ready?
He says, "If you're hitched up," I say, "wait." He stops, looking at Pa. Vernon spits, without moving. He spits with decorous and deliberate precision into the pocked dust below the porch. Pa rubs his hands slowly on his knees. He is gazing out beyond the crest of the bluff, out across the land. Jewel watches him a moment, then he goes on to the pail and drinks again.
I mislike indecision as much as they're a man.
Pa says, "It means $3, I say. The shirt across Pa's hump is faded lighter than the rest of it. There is no sweat stain on his shirt. I have never seen a sweat stain on his shirt. He was sick once from working in the sun when he was 22 years old, and he tells people that if he ever sweats, he will die. I suppose he believes it.
But if she don't last until you get back, she will be disappointed."
Vernon spits into the dust, but it will rain before morning.
She's counted on it. She'll want to start right away. I know her. I promised her I'd keep the team here and ready, and she's counting on it.
"We'll need that $3 then, sure," I say. He gazes out over the land, rubbing his hands on his knees. Since he lost his teeth, his mouth collapses in slow repetition when he dips. The stubble gives his lower face that appearance that old dogs have. "You'd better make up your mind soon, so we can get there and get a load on before dark," I say.
Ma ain't that sick. Shut up, Darl.
That's right. She seems more like herself today than she has in a week. Time you and Jewel get back, she'll be setting up.
You ought to know. You've been here often enough looking at her. You or your folks.
Vernon looks at him. Jewel's eyes look like pale wood in his high-blooded face. He is a head taller than any of the rest of us, always was. I told them that's why Ma always whipped him and petted him more, because he was peekling around the house more. That's why she named him Jewel, I told them.
Shut up, Jewel,
Pa says, but as though he is not listening much. He gazes out across the land, rubbing his knees. You could borrow the loan of Vernon's team, and we could catch up with you, I say, if she didn't wait for us.
Ah, shut your goddamn mouth.
She'll want to go on our own.
Pa says. He rubs his knees.
Don't air a man mislike it more.
It's laying there, watching Cash whittle on that dam.
Jewel says. He says it harshly, savagely, but he does not say the word. Like a little boy in the dark to flail his courage and suddenly aghast into silence by his own noise.
She wanted that like she wants to go in our own wagon. She'll rest easier for knowing it's a good one and private. She was ever a private woman. You know it well.
Then let it be private. But how the hell can you expect it to be?
He looks at the back of Pa's head, his eyes like pale wooden eyes.
She'll hold on till it's finished. She'll hold on till everything's ready, till her own good time. And with the roads like they are now, it won't take you no time to get her to town.
It's fixing up to rain. I am a luckless man. I have ever been.
He rubs his hands on his knees.
It's that darn doctor, liable to come at any time. I couldn't get word to him till so late. If he was to come tomorrow and tell her the time was nigh, she wouldn't wait, I know her. Wagon or no wagon, she wouldn't wait. Then she'd be upset, and I wouldn't upset her for the living world. With that family burying ground in Jefferson and them of her blood waiting for her there, she'll be impatient. I promised my word me and the boys would get her there quick as mules could walk it, so she could rest quiet.
He rubs his hands on his knees.
No man ever misliked it more.
If everybody wasn't burning hell to get her there,
Jewel says in that harsh, savage voice.
With Cash all day long right under the window, hammering and sawing at that.
It was her wish. You got no affection nor gentleness for her. You never had. We would be beholden to no man, me and her. We have never yet been, and she will rest quieter for knowing it and that it was her own blood sawed out the boards and drove the nails. She was ever one to clean up after herself.
It means $3, I say. Do you want us to go or not? Pa rubs his knees. We'll be back by tomorrow sundown.
Well,
Pa says. He looks out over the land, awry-haired, mouthing the snuff slowly against his gums.
Come on.
Jewel says. He goes down the steps. Vernon spits neatly into the dust.
By sundown, now. I would not keep her waiting.
Jewel glances back. Then he goes on around the house. I enter the hall, hearing the voices before I reach the door. Tilting a little down the hill as our house does, a breeze draws through the hall all the time, up slanting. A feather dropped near the front door will rise and brush along the ceiling, slanting backward until it reaches the down-turning current at the back door. So with voices. As you enter the hall, they sound as though they were speaking out of the air about your head.
It was the sweetest thing I ever saw. It was like he knew he would never see her again, that Anse Bundren was driving him from his mother's deathbed, never to see her in this world again. I always said Darl was different from those others. I always said he was the only one of them that had his mother's nature, had any natural affection. Not that Jewel, the one she labored so to bear and coddled and petted so, and him flinging into tantrums or sulking spells, inventing devilment to devil her, until I would have trailed him time and time. Not him to come and tell her goodbye. Not him to miss a chance to make that extra $3 at the price of his mother's goodbye kiss. A Bundren through and through, loving nobody, caring for nothing except how to get something with the least amount of work. Mr. Tull says Darl asked them to wait. He said Darl almost begged them on his knees not to force him to leave her in her condition. But nothing would do but Anse and Jewel must make that $3. Nobody that knows Anse could have expected different. But to think of that boy, that Jewel, selling all those years of self-denial and downright partiality, they couldn't fool me. Mr. Tull says Mrs. Bundren liked Jewel the least of all, but I knew better. I knew she was partial to him, to the same quality in him that let her put up with Anse Bundren when Mr. Tull said she ought to poison him for $3, denying his dying mother the goodbye kiss. Why, for the last 3 weeks I have been coming over every time I could, coming sometimes when I shouldn't have, neglecting my own family and duties so that somebody would be with her in her last moments and she would not have to face the great unknown without one familiar face to give her courage. Not that I deserve credit for it. I will expect the same for myself. But thank God it will be the faces of my loved kin, my blood and flesh, for in my husband and children I have been more blessed than most, trials though they have been at times. She lived, a lonely woman, lonely with her pride, trying to make folks believe different, hiding the fact that they just suffered her, because she was not cold in the coffin before they were carting her 40 miles away to bury her, flouting the will of God to do it, refusing to let her lie in the same earth with those Bundrens.
But she wanted to go. It was her own wish to lie among her own people.
Then why didn't she go alive? I said. Not one of them would have stopped her, with even that little one almost old enough now to be selfish and stone-hearted like the rest of them.
It was her own wish. I heard Anse say it was.
And you would believe Anse, of course, I said. A man like you would. Don't tell me.
I believe him about something he couldn't expect to make anything off of me by not telling.
Don't tell me, I said. A woman's place is with her husband and children, alive or dead. Would you expect me to want to go back to Alabama and leave you and the girls when my time comes, that I left of my own will to cast my lot with yours for better and worse, until death and after?
Well, folks are different.
I should hope so. I have tried to live right in the sight of God and man, for the honor and comfort of my Christian husband and the love and respect of my Christian children, so that, when I lay me down in the consciousness of my duty and reward, I will be surrounded by loving faces, carrying the farewell kiss of each of my loved ones into my reward, not like Addie Bundren dying alone, hiding her pride and her broken heart. Glad to go. Lying there with her head propped up so she could watch Cash building the coffin, having to watch him so he would not skimp on it, like as not, with those men not worrying about anything, except if there was time to earn another $3 before the rain come and the river got too high to get across it. Like as not, if they hadn't decided to make that last load. They would have loaded her into the wagon on a quilt and crossed the river first and then stopped and give her time to die what Christian death they would let her. Except Darl. It was the sweetest thing I ever saw. Sometimes I lose faith in human nature for a time. I am assailed by doubt. But always the Lord restores my faith and reveals to me his bounteous love for his creatures. Not Jewel, the one she had always cherished, not him. He was after that $3 extra. It was Darl, the one that folks say is queer, lazy, pottering about the place no better than Anse, with cash, a good carpenter, and always more building than he can get around to, and Jewel always doing something that made him some money or got him talked about. And that near-naked girl always standing over Addie with a fan so that every time a body tried to talk to her and cheer her up, would answer for her right quick, like she was trying to keep anybody from coming near her at all. It was Darl. He come to the door and stood there, looking at his dying mother. He just looked at her, and I felt the bounteous love of the Lord again in his mercy. I saw that with Jewel she had just been pretending, but that it was between her and Darl that the understanding and the true love was. He just looked at her, not even coming in where she could see him and get upset, knowing that Anse was driving him away and he would never see her again. He said nothing, just looking at her.
"What you want, Darl?"
Dewey Dell said, not stopping the fan, speaking up quick, keeping even him from her. He didn't answer. He just stood and looked at his dying mother, his heart too full for words.
The first time me and Leif picked on down the row. Pa doesn't sweat because he will catch his death from the sickness, so everybody that comes to help us. And Jewel don't care about anything, he is not kin to us in caring, not care kin. And Cash likes sawing the long hot sad yellow days up into planks and nailing them to something. And Pa thinks because neighbors will always treat one another that way because he has always been too busy letting neighbors do for him to find out. And I did not think that Darl would, that sits at the supper table with his eyes gone further than the food and the lamp, full of the land dug out of his skull and the holes filled with distance beyond the land. We picked on down the row, the woods getting closer and closer and the secret shade, picking on into the secret shade with my sack and Leif's sack. Because I said will I or won't I when the sack was half full, because I said if the sack is full when we get to the woods it won't be me. I said if it don't mean for me to do it the sack will not be full and I will turn up the next row, but if the sack is full, I cannot help it. It will be that I had to do it all the time and I cannot help it. And we picked on toward the secret shade and our eyes would drown together touching on his hands and my hands and I didn't say anything. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I am picking into your sack." And so it was full when we came to the end of the row and I could not help it. And so it was because I could not help it. It was then, and then I saw Darl and he knew. He said he knew without the words like he told me that Ma is going to die without words, and I knew he knew because if he had said he knew with the words I would not have believed that he had been there and saw us. But he said he did know and I said, "Are you going to tell Pa? Are you going to kill him?" Without the words I said it and he said, "Why, without the words?" And that's why I can talk to him with knowing with hating because he knows. He stands in the door, looking at her. "What you want, Darl?" I say.
"She is going to die,"
he says. "And old turkey buzzard Tull coming to watch her die, but I can fool them. When is she going to die?" I say.
"Before we get back."
"Then why are you taking Jewel?" I say.
"I want him to help me load."
Anse keeps on rubbing his knees. His overalls are faded, on one knee a serge patch cut out of a pair of Sunday pants, or iron slick.
No man mislikes it more than me.
A fellow's got to guess ahead now and then, I say. But, come long and short, It won't be no harm done neither way.
She'll want to get started right off. It's far enough to Jefferson at best.
But the roads is good now. It's fixing to rain tonight, too. His folks buries at New Hope, too, not 3 miles away. But it's just like him to marry a woman born a day's hard ride away and have her die on him. He looks out over the land, rubbing his knees.
No man so mislikes it.
They'll get back in plenty of time. I wouldn't worry none.
It means $3.
Might be it won't be no need for them to rush back, no ways. I hope it.
She's a-going. Her mind is set on it.
It's a hard life on women, for a fact. Some women. I mind my mammy lived to be 70 and more. Worked every day, rain or shine, never a sick day since her last chap was born, until one day she kind of looked around her and then she went and taken that lace-trimmed nightgown she had had 45 years and never wore out of the chest and put it on and laid down on the bed and pulled the covers up and shut her eyes. You all will have to look out for Pa the best you can, she said. I'm tired. Anse rubs his hands on his knees.
The Lord giveth,
he says. We can hear Cash hammering and sawing beyond the corner. It's true. Never a truer breath was ever breathed. The Lord giveth, I say. That boy comes up the hill. He is carrying a fish nigh long as he is. He slings it to the ground and grunts ha and spits over his shoulder like a man. Dern nigh long as he is. What's that? I say. A hog? Where'd you get it?
Down to the bridge,
he says. He turns it over, the underside caked over with dust where it is wet, the eye coated over, humped under the dirt.
Are you aiming to leave it laying there?
I aim to show it to Ma,
Vardaman says. He looks toward the door. We can hear the talking, coming out on the draft. Cash, too, knocking and hammering at the boards.
There's company in there.
Just my folks, I say. They'd enjoy to see it too. He says nothing, watching the door. Then he looks down at the fish laying in the dust. He turns it over with his foot and prods at the eye bump with his toe, gouging at it. Anse is looking out over the land. Vardaman looks at Anse's face, then at the door. He turns, going toward the corner of the house, when Anse calls him without looking around.
You clean that fish.
Vardaman stops.
Why can't Dewey Dell clean it?
You clean that fish.
Pa.
You clean it.
Anse says. He don't look around. Vardaman comes back and picks up the fish. It slides out of his hands, smearing wet dirt onto him, and flops down, dirtying itself again, gape-mouthed, goggle-eyed, hiding into the dust like it was ashamed of being dead, like it was in a hurry to get back hit again. Vardaman cusses it. He cusses it like a grown man, standing straddle of it. Anse don't look around. Vardaman picks it up again. He goes on around the house, toting it in both arms like a armful of wood, it overlapping him on both ends, head and tail. Dern nigh big as he is, Anse's wrists dangle out of his sleeves. I never see him with a shirt on that looked like it was his in all my life. They all looked like Jewel might have give him his old ones. Not Jewel, though. He's long-armed, even if he is spindling. Except for the lack of sweat. You could tell they ain't been nobody else's but Anse's that way without no mistake. His eyes look like pieces of burnt-out cinder fixed in his face, looking out over the land. When the shadow touches the steps he says,
It's 5 o'clock.
Just as I get up, Cora comes to the door and says it's time to get on. Anse reaches for his shoes.
Now, Mr. Bundren, don't you get up now.
He puts his shoes on, stomping into them, like he does everything, like he is hoping all the time he really can't do it and can quit trying to. When we go up the hall we can hear them clumping on the floor like they was iron shoes. He comes toward the door where she is, blinking his eyes, kind of looking ahead of himself before he sees, like he is hoping to find her setting up, in a chair maybe or maybe sweeping, and looks into the door in that surprised way like he looks in and finds her still in bed every time and Dewey Dell still fanning her with the fan. He stands there, like he don't aim to move again nor nothing else.
Well, I reckon we better get on. I got to feed the chickens.
It's fixing to rain, too. Clouds like that don't lie, and the cotton making every day the Lord sends. That'll be something else for him. Cash is still trimming at the boards.
If there's a thing we can do.
Anse'll let us know, I say. Anse don't look at us. He looks around, blinking, in that surprised way, like he had wore himself down being surprised and was even surprised at that. If Cash just works that careful on my barn. I told Anse it likely won't be no need, I say. I so hope it.
Her mind is set on it. I reckon she's bound to go.
It comes to all of us. Let the Lord comfort you.
About that corn, I say. I tell him again I will help him out if he gets into a tight, with her sick and all. Like most folks around here, I done help him so much already I can't quit now.
I aim to get to it today. Seems like I can't get my mind on nothing.
Maybe she'll hold out till you are laid by, I say.
If God wills it.
Let him comfort you.
If Cash just works that careful on my barn. He looks up when we pass.
Don't reckon I'll get to you this week.
Tain't no rush, I say. Whenever you get around to it. We get into the wagon. Cora sets the cake box on her lap. It's fixing to rain, show.
I don't know what he'll do, I just don't know.
Poor Anse. She kept him at work for 30-odd years. I reckon she is tired.
And I reckon she'll be behind him for 30 years more. Or if it ain't her, he'll get another one before cotton picking.
I reckon Cash and Darl can get married now.
That poor boy, the poor little tyke.
What about Jewel?
He can too.
I reckon he will. I reckon so. I reckon there's more gals than one around here that don't want to see Jewel tied down. Well, they needn't to worry.
Why, Kate?
The wagon begins to rattle.
The poor little tyke.
It's fixing to rain this night. Yes, sir. A rattling wagon is mighty dry weather, for a birdsell. But that'll be cured. It will for a fact.
She ought to taken them cakes after she said she would.
During that road. And it fixing to rain too. I can stand here and same as see it with second sight, shutting down behind them like a wall, shutting down betwixt them and my given promise. I do the best I can, much as I can get my mind on anything, but durn them boys. Laying there, right tip to my door, where every bad luck that comes and goes is bound to find it. I told Addie you want any luck living on a road when it come by here, and she said, for the world like a woman, get up and move, then. But I told her it want no luck in it, because the Lord put roads for traveling, why he laid them down flat on the earth. When he aims for something to be always moving, he makes it long ways, like a road or a horse or a wagon, but when he aims for something to stay put, he makes it up and down ways, like a tree or a man. And so he never aimed for folks to live on a road, because which gets there first, I says, the road or the house? Did you ever know him to set a road down by a house? I says, no you never, I says, because it's always men can't rest till they gets the house set where everybody that passes in a wagon can spit in the doorway, keeping the folks restless and wanting to get up and go somewheres else when he aimed for them to stay put like a tree or a stand of corn. Because if he'd aimed for man to be always moving and going somewheres else, wouldn't he have put him long ways on his belly, like a snake? It stands to reason he would. Putting it where every bad luck prowling can find it and come straight to my door, charging me taxes on top of it. Making me pay for cash, having to get them carpenter notions when if it hadn't been no road come there, he wouldn't got them, falling off of churches and lifting no hand in 6 months, and me and Addie slaving and slaving, when there's plenty of sawing on this place he could do if he's got to saw. And Darl too. Talking me out of him, during them. It ain't that I'm afraid of work, I always has fed me and mine and kept a roof above us, it's that they would shorthand me just because he tends to his own business, just because he's got his eyes full of the land all the time. I says to them, he was all right at first, with his eyes full of the land, because the land laid up and down ways then. It wasn't till that air road come and switched the land around long ways and his eyes still full of the land, that they begun to threaten me out of him, trying to shorthand me with the law. Making me pay for it. She was well and hale as e'er a woman ever were, except for that road. Just laying down, resting herself in her own bed, asking not of none. Are you sick, Addie? I said.
I am not sick.
You lay you down and rest you. I knowed you were not sick. You're just tired. You lay you down and rest.
I am not sick. I will get up.
Lay still and rest, I said. You are just tired. You can get up tomorrow. And she was laying there, well and hale as e'er a woman ever were, except for that road. I never sent for you, I said. I take you to witness I never sent for you.
I know you didn't. I bound that. Where is she?
She's laying down. She's just a little tired, but she'll.
Get out of here, Anse. Go set on the porch a while.
And now I got to pay for it, me without a tooth in my head, hoping to get ahead enough so I could get my mouth fixed where I could eat God's own victuals as a man should, and her hale and well as e'er a woman in the land until that day. Got to pay for being put to the need of that $3. Got to pay for the way for them boys to have to go away to earn it. And now I can see same as second sight the rain shutting down betwixt us, and coming up that road like a dern man, like it want e'er other house to rain on in all the living land. I have heard men cuss their luck, and right, for they were sinful men. But I do not say it's a curse on me, because I have done no wrong to be cussed by. I am not religious, I reckon. But peace is my heart, I know it is. I have done things, but neither better nor worse than them that pretend other like, and I know that old Marster will care for me as for e'er a sparrow that falls. But it seems hard that a man in his need could be so flouted by a road. Vardaman comes around the house, bloody as a hog to his knees, and that ere fish chopped up with the axe like as not, or maybe throwed away for him to lie about the dogs eat it. Well, I reckon I ain't no call to expect no more of him than of his man-growed brothers. He comes along, watching the house, quiet, and sits on the steps.
Phew. I'm pure tired.
Go wash them hands, I say. But couldn't no woman strove harder than Addie to make them right, man and boy? I'll say that for her.
It was full of blood and guts as a hog.
But I just can't seem to get no heart into anything, with this here weather sapping me too.
Pa. Is Ma sick some more?
Go wash them hands, I say. But I just can't seem to get no heart into it.
He has been to town this week. The back of his neck is trimmed close, with a white line between hair and sunburn like a joint of white bone. He has not once looked back. Jewel, I say, back running, tunneled between the two sets of bobbing mule ears, the road vanishes beneath the wagon, as though it were a ribbon, and the front axle were a spool. Do you know she is going to die, Jewel? It takes two people to make you, and one people to die. That's how the world is going to end. I said to Dewey Dell, you want her to die so you can get to town. Is that it? She wouldn't say what we both knew. The reason you will not say it is, when you say it even to yourself, you will know it is true. Is that it? But you know it is true now. I can almost tell you the day when you knew it is true. Why won't you say it even to yourself? She will not say it. She just keeps on saying, are you going to tell Pa? Are you going to kill him? You cannot believe it is true because you cannot believe that Dewey Dell Bundren could have such bad luck. Is that it? The sun, an hour above the horizon, is poised like a bloody egg upon a crest of thunderheads. The light has turned copper, in the eye portentous, in the nose sulphurous, smelling of lightning. When Peabody comes, they will have to use the rope. He has puzzle-gutted himself eating cold greens. With the rope they will haul him up the path, balloon-like up the sulphurous air. Jewel, do you know that Addie Bundren is going to die? Addie Bundren is going to die?
When Anse finally sent for me of his own accord, I said, he has wore her out at last. And I said a damn good thing, and at first I would not go because there might be something I could do and I would have to haul her back, by God. I thought maybe they have the same sort of fool ethics in heaven they have in the medical college and that it was maybe Vernon Tull, sending for me again, getting me there in the nick of time, as Vernon always does things. getting the most for Anse's money like he does for his own. But when it got far enough into the day for me to read weather sign, I knew it couldn't have been anybody but Anse that sent. I knew that nobody but a luckless man could ever need a doctor in the face of a cyclone. And I knew that if it had finally occurred to Anse himself that he needed one, it was already too late. When I reach the spring and get down and hitch the team, the sun has gone down behind a bank of black cloud like a top-heavy mountain range, like a load of cinders dumped over there, and there is no wind. I could hear Cash sawing for a mile before I got there. Anse is standing at the top of the bluff above the path. Where's the horse?
Jules taken and gone. Can't nobody else catch it. You'll have to walk up, I reckon.
Me, walk up, weighing 225 pounds? I say. Walk up that darn wall? He stands there beside a tree. Too bad the Lord made the mistake of giving trees roots and giving the Addie Bundrens he makes feet and legs. If he'd just swapped them, there wouldn't ever be a worry about this country being deforested someday. Or any other country. What do you aim for me to do? I say. Stay here and get blowed clean out of the county when that cloud breaks? Even with the horse it would take me 15 minutes to ride up across the pasture to the top of the ridge and reach the house. The path looks like a crooked limb blown against the bluff. Anse has not been in town in 12 years. And how his mother ever got up there to bear him, he being his mother's son.
Vardaman's getting the rope.
After a while Vardaman appears with the plow line. He gives the end of it to Anse and comes down the path, uncoiling it. You hold it tight, I say. I done already wrote this visit onto my books, so I'm going to charge you just the same, whether I get there or not.
I got hit. You can come on up.
I'll be damned if I can see why I don't quit. A man 70 years old, weighing 200 and odd pounds, being hauled up and down a damn mountain on a rope. I reckon it's because I must reach the $50,000 mark of dead accounts on my books before I can quit. What the hell does your wife mean, I say, taking sick on top of a darn mountain?
I'm right sorry.
He let the rope go, just dropped it, and he has turned toward the house. There is a little daylight up here still, of the color of sulfur matches. The boards look like strips of sulfur. Cash does not look back. Vernon Tull says he brings each board up to the window for her to see it and say it is all right. The boy overtakes us. Anse looks back at him.
Where's the rope?
It's where you left it, I say. But never you mind that rope. I got to get back down that bluff. I don't aim for that storm to catch me up here. I'd blow too darn far once I got started. The girl is standing by the bed, fanning her. When we enter she turns her head and looks at us. She has been dead these 10 days. I suppose it's having been a part of Anse for so long that she cannot even make that change, if change it be. I can remember how when I was young I believed death to be a phenomenon of the body. Now I know it to be merely a function of the mind, and that of the minds of the ones who suffer the bereavement. The nihilists say it is the end, the fundamentalists, the beginning, when in reality it is no more than a single tenant or family moving out of a tenement or a town. She looks at us. Only her eyes seem to move. It's like they touch us, not with sight or sense, but like the stream from a hose touches you, the stream at the instant of impact as dissociated from the nozzle as though it had never been there. She does not look at Anse at all. She looks at me, then at the boy. Beneath the quilt she is no more than a bundle of rotten sticks. Well, Miss Addie, I say. The girl does not stop the fan. How are you, sister? Her head lies gaunt on the pillow, looking at the boy. You picked out a fine time to get me out here and bring up a storm. Then I send Anse and the boy out. She watches the boy as he leaves the room. She has not moved save her eyes. He and Anse are on the porch when I come out, the boy sitting on the steps, Anse standing by a post, not even leaning against it, his arms dangling, the hair pushed and matted up on his head like a dipped rooster. He turns his head, blinking at me. "Why didn't you send for me sooner?"
"It was just one thing and then another. That air corned me and the boys was aiming to get up with, and Dewey Dell taking good care of her, and folks coming in and offering to help and such, till I just thought."
"Damn the money," I say. "Did you ever hear of me worrying a fellow before he was ready to pay?"
"I ain't begrudging the money. I just kept thinking. She's going, is she?"
The dern little tyke is sitting on the top step, looking smaller than ever in the sulfur-colored light. That's the one trouble with this country, everything, weather, all, hangs on too long. Like our rivers, our land, opaque, slow, violent, shaping and creating the me of man in its implacable and brooding image.
"I knowed it. All the while I made show. Her mind is set on it."
"And a damn good thing too," I say. With a trifling, he sits on the top step, small, motionless in faded overalls. When I came out he looked up at me, then at Anse. But now he has stopped looking at us. He just sits there.
"Have you told her yet?"
"What for? What the devil for?"
"She'll know it. I know that when she see you she would know it, same as writing. You wouldn't need to tell her. Her mind."
Behind us the girl says.
Paul.
I look at her face. "You better go quick," I say. When we enter the room she is watching the door. She looks at me. Her eyes look like lamps blaring up just before the oil is gone.
She wants you to go out.
"Now, Addie, when he come all the way from Jefferson to get you well?"
She watches me, I can feel her eyes. It's like she was shoving at me with them. I have seen it before in women. Seen them drive from the room, them coming with sympathy and pity, with actual help, and clinging to some trifling animal to whom they never were more than pack horses. That's what they mean by the love that passeth understanding, that pride, that furious desire to hide that abject nakedness which we bring here with us, carry with us into operating rooms, carry stubbornly and furiously with us into the earth again. I leave the room. Beyond the porch Cash's saw snores steadily into the board. A minute later she calls his name, her voice harsh and strong.
Cash! You, Cash!
Pa stands beside the bed. From behind his leg Vardaman peers, with his round head and his eyes round and his mouth beginning to open. She looks at Pa. All her failing life appears to drain into her eyes, urgent, irremediable.
It's Jewel she wants.
"Why, Addie, him and Darl went to make one more load. They thought there was time. That you would wait for them, and that $3 and all."
He stoops, laying his hand on hers. For a while yet she looks at him, without reproach, without anything at all, as if her eyes alone are listening to the irrevocable cessation of his voice. Then she raises herself, who has not moved in 10 days. Dewey Dell leans down, trying to press her back.
More. More.
She is looking out the window, at Cash stooping steadily at the board in the failing light, laboring on toward darkness and into it, as though the stroking of the saw illumined its own motion, board and saw engendered.
You! Cash!
She shouts, her voice harsh, strong, and unimpaired.
You! Cash!
He looks up at the gaunt face framed by the window in the twilight. It is a composite picture of all time since he was a child. He drops the saw and lifts the board for her to see, watching the window in which the face has not moved. He drags a second plank into position and slants the two of them into their final juxtaposition, gesturing toward the ones yet on the ground, shaping with his empty hand in pantomime the finished box. For a while still she looks down at him from the composite picture, neither with censure nor approbation. Then the face disappears. She lies back and turns her head without so much as glancing at Pa. She looks at Vardaman, her eyes, the life in them, rushing suddenly upon them. The two flames glare up for a steady instant. Then they go out as though someone had leaned down and blown upon them.
More. More.
Leaning above the bed, her hands lifted a little, the fan still moving like it has for 10 days, she begins to keen. Her voice is strong, young, tremulous and clear, wrapped with its own timbre and volume, the fan still moving steadily up and down, whispering the useless air. Then she flings herself across Addie Bundren's knees, clutching her, shaking her with the furious strength of the young, before sprawling suddenly across the handful of rotten bones that Addie Bundren left. Jarring the whole bed into a chattering sibilance of mattress shucks, her arms outflung and the fan in one hand still beating with expiring breath into the quilt. From behind Pa's leg Vardaman peers, his mouth full open and all color draining from his face into his mouth, as though he has by some means fleshed his own teeth in himself, sucking. He begins to move slowly backward from the bed, his eyes round, his pale face fading into the dusk like a piece of paper pasted on a failing wall, and so out of the door. Pa leans above the bed in the twilight, his humped silhouette partaking of that owl-like quality of awry-feathered, disgruntled outrage within which lurks a wisdom too profound or too inert for even thought.
"Durn them boys!"
Jewel, I say. Overhead the day drives level and gray, hiding the sun by a flight of gray spears. In the rain the mules smoke a little, splashed yellow with mud, the off one clinging in sliding lunges to the side of the road above the ditch. The tilted lumber gleams dull yellow, water-soaked and heavy as lead, tilted at a steep angle into the ditch above the broken wheel. About the shattered spokes and about Jewel's ankles a runnel of yellow neither water nor earth swirls, curving with the yellow road neither of earth nor water, down the hill dissolving into a streaming mass of dark green neither of earth nor sky. Jewel, I say. Cash comes to the door carrying the saw. Pa stands beside the bed, humped, his arms dangling. He turns his head, his shabby profile, his chin collapsing slowly as he works the snuff against his gums.
She's gone.
"She taken and left us."
Cash does not look at him.
"How nigh are you done?"
Cash does not answer. He enters carrying the saw.
"I reckon you better get at it. You'll have to do the best you can, with them boys gone off that-a-way."
Cash looks down at her face. He is not listening to Pa at all. He does not approach the bed. He stops in the middle of the floor, the saw against his leg, his sweating arms powdered lightly with sawdust, his face composed.
"If you get in it tight, maybe some of them will get here tomorrow and help you. Vernon could."
Cash is not listening. He is looking down at her peaceful, rigid face fading into the dusk, as though darkness were a precursor of the ultimate earth, until at last the face seems to float detached upon it, lightly as the reflection of a dead leaf.
"There is Christians enough to help you."
Cash is not listening. After a while he turns without looking at Pa and leaves the room. Then the saw begins to snore again.
"They will help us in our sorrow."
The sound of the saw is steady, competent, unhurried, stirring the dying light so that at each stroke her face seems to wake a little into an expression of listening and of waiting, as though she were counting the strokes. Pa looks down at the face, at the black sprawl of Dewey Dell's hair, the outflung arms, the clutched fan now motionless on the fading quilt.
"I reckon you better get supper on."
Dewey Dell does not move.
"Get up, now, and put supper on. We got to keep our strength up. I reckon Dr. Peabody's right hungry, coming all this way. And Cash'll need to eat quick and get back to work so he can finish it in time."
Dewey Dell rises, heaving to her feet. She looks down at the face. It is like a casting of fading bronze upon the pillow, the hands alone still with any semblance of life, a curled, gnarled ineptness, a spent yet alert quality from which weariness, exhaustion, travail has not yet departed, as though they doubted even yet the actuality of rest, guarding with horned and penurious alertness the cessation which they know cannot last. Dewey Dell stoops and slides the quilt from beneath them and draws it up over them to the chin, smoothing it down, drawing it smooth. Then, without looking at Pa, she goes around the bed and leaves the room. She will go out where Peabody is, where she can stand in the twilight and look at his back with such an expression that, feeling her eyes and turning, he will say, "I would not let it grieve me now." She was old and sick too, suffering more than we knew. She couldn't have got well. Vardaman's getting big now, and with you to take good care of them all. I would try not to let it grieve me. I expect you'd better go and get some supper ready. It don't have to be much, but they'll need to eat. And she looking at him, saying, "You could do so much for me if you just would. If you just knew. I am I, and you are you, and I know it, and you don't know it, and you could do so much for me if you just would. And if you just would, then I could tell you, and then nobody would have to know it except you and me." And Darl Pa stands over the bed, dangle-armed, humped, motionless. He raises his hand to his head, scouring his hair, listening to the saw. He comes nearer and rubs his hand, palm and back, on his thigh, and lays it on her face, and then on the hump of quilt where her hands are. He touches the quilt as he saw Dewey Dell do, trying to smooth it up to the chin, but disarranging it instead. He tries to smooth it again, clumsily, his hand awkward as a claw, smoothing at the wrinkles which he made and which continue to emerge beneath his hand with perverse ubiquity, so that at last he desists, his hand falling to his side and stroking itself again, palm and back, on his thigh. The sound of the saw snores steadily into the room. Pa breathes with a quiet, rasping sound, mouthing the snuff against his gums.
"God's will be done. Now I can get them teeth."
Jewel's hat droops limp about his neck, channeling water onto the soaked towsack tied about his shoulders, as ankle-deep in the running ditch he pries with a slipping 2x4 with a piece of rotting log for fulcrum at the axle. "Jewel, I say, she is dead, Jewel. Addie Bundren is dead."
Then I begin to run. I run toward the back and come to the edge of the porch and stop. Then I begin to cry. I can feel where the fish was in the dust. It is cut up into pieces of not fish now, not blood on my hands and overalls. Then it wasn't so. It hadn't happened then. And now she is getting so far ahead I cannot catch her. The trees look like chickens when they ruffle out into the cool dust on the hot days. If I jump off the porch I will be where the fish was, and it all cut up into not fish now. I can hear the bed and her face in them, and I can feel the floor shake when he walks on it. That came and did it. That came and did it when she was all right, but he came and did it. The fat son of a bitch. I jump from the porch, running. The top of the barn comes swooping up out of the twilight. If I jump I can go through it like the pink lady in the circus, into the warm smelling, without having to wait. My hands grab at the bushes. Beneath my feet the rocks and dirt go rubbling down. Then I can breathe again, in the warm smelling. I enter the stall, trying to touch him, and then I can cry, then I vomit the crying. As soon as he gets through, kicking I can, and then I can cry, the crying can. He killed her. He killed her. The life in him runs under the skin, under my hand, running through the splotches, smelling up into my nose where the sickness is beginning to cry. Vomiting the crying, and then I can breathe, vomiting it. It makes a lot of noise. I can smell the life running up from under my hands, up my arms, and then I can't leave the stall. I cannot find it. In the dark, along the dust, the walls I cannot find it. The crying makes a lot of noise. I wish it wouldn't make so much noise. Then I find it in the wagon shed, in the dust, and I run across the lot and into the road, the stick jouncing on my shoulder. They watch me as I run up, beginning to jerk back, their eyes rolling, snorting, jerking back on the hitch rein. I strike. I can hear the stick striking, I can see it hitting their heads, the breast yoke, missing altogether sometimes as they rear and plunge, but I am glad. You killed my ma. The stick breaks, they rearing and snorting, their feet popping loud on the ground, loud because it is going to rain and the air is empty for the rain. But it is still long enough. I run this way and that as they rear and jerk at the hitch rein, striking. You killed her. I strike at them, striking, they wheeling in a long lunge, the buggy wheeling onto two wheels and motionless like it is nailed to the ground, and the horses motionless like they are nailed by the hind feet to the center of a whirling plate. I run in the dust. I cannot see, running in the sucking dust where the buggy vanishes tilted on two wheels. I strike, the stick hitting into the ground, bouncing, striking into the dust and then into the air again, and the dust sucking on down the road faster than if a car was in it. And then I can cry, looking at the stick. It is broken down to my hand, not longer than stove wood that was a long stick. I throw it away and I can cry. It does not make so much noise now. The cow is standing in the barn door, chewing. When she sees me come into the lot she lows, her mouth full of flopping green, her tongue flopping. I ain't going to milk you. I ain't going to do nothing for them. I hear her turn when I pass. When I turn she is just behind me with her sweet hot hard breath. Didn't I tell you I wouldn't? She nudges me, snuffing. She moans deep inside, her mouth closed. I jerk my hand, cursing her like Jewel does. Get now. I stoop my hand to the ground and run at her. She jumps back and whirls away and stops, watching me. She moans. She goes onto the path and stands there, looking up the path. It is dark in the barn, warm, smelling, silent. I can cry quietly, watching the top of the hill. Cash comes to the hill, limping where he fell off of the church. He looks down at the spring, then up the road and back toward the barn. He comes down the path stiffly and looks at the broken hitch rein and at the dust in the road and then up the road, where the dust is gone.
I hope they've got clean past Tull's by now. I so hope it.
Cash turns and limps up the path. Darn him. I showed him. Darn him. I am not crying now. I am not anything. Dewey Dell comes to the hill and calls me. Vardaman. I am not anything. I am quiet. You, Vardaman. I can cry quiet now, feeling and hearing my tears. Then it went. It hadn't happened then. It was laying right there on the ground. And now she's getting ready to cook it. It is dark. I can hear wood, silence, I know them. But not living sounds, not even him. It is as though the dark were resolving him out of his integrity, into an unrelated scattering of components, snuffings and stampings, smells of cooling flesh and ammoniac air, an illusion of a coordinated whole of splotched hide and strong bones within which, detached and secret and familiar, and is different from I is. I see him dissolve legs, a rolling eye, a gaudy splotching like cold flames and float upon the dark and fading solution, all one yet neither, all either yet none. I can see hearing coil toward him, caressing, shaping his hard-shaped fetlock, hip, shoulder and head, smell and sound. I am not afraid. Cooked and ate. Cooked and ate.
He could do so much for me if he just would. He could do everything for me. It's like everything in the world for me is inside a tub full of guts, so that you wonder how there can be any room in it for anything else very important. He is a big tub of guts and I am a little tub of guts, and if there is not any room for anything else important in a big tub of guts, how can it be room in a little tub of guts? But I know it is there because God gave women a sign when something has happened bad. It's because I am alone. If I could just feel it, it would be different, because I would not be alone. But if I were not alone, everybody would know it. And he could do so much for me, and then I would not be alone. Then I could be all right alone. I would let him come in between me and Leif, like Darl came in between me and Leif, and so Leif is alone too. He is Leif and I am Dewey Dell, and when Mother died I had to go beyond and outside of me and Leif and Darl to grieve because he could do so much for me and he don't know it. He don't even know it. From the back porch I cannot see the barn. Then the sound of Cash's sawing comes in from that way. It is like a dog outside the house, going back and forth around the house to whatever door you come to, waiting to come in. He said I worry more than you do and I said you don't know what worry is so I can't worry. I try to, but I can't think long enough to worry. I light the kitchen lamp. The fish, cut into jagged pieces, bleeds quietly in the pan. I put it into the cupboard quick, listening into the hall, hearing. It took her 10 days to die, maybe she don't know it is yet. Maybe she won't go until Cash. Or maybe until Jewel. I take the dish of greens from the cupboard and the bread pan from the cold stove, and I stop, watching the door.
Where's Vardaman?
In the lamp his sawdust arms look like sand. I don't know. I ain't seen him.
Peabody's team run away. See if you can find Vardaman. The horse will let him catch him.
Well, tell them to come to supper. I cannot see the barn. I said, I don't know how to worry. I don't know how to cry. I tried, but I can't. After a while the sound of the saw comes around, coming dark along the ground in the dusk dark. Then I can see him, going up and down above the plank. You come in to supper, I say. Tell him. He could do everything for me. And he don't know it. He is his guts and I am my guts. And I am Leif's guts. That's it. I don't see why he didn't stay in town. We are country people, not as good as town people. I don't see why he didn't. Then I can see the top of the barn. The cow stands at the foot of the path, lowing. When I turn back, Cash is gone. I carry the buttermilk in. Pa and Cash and he are at the table.
Where's that big fish Bud caught, sister?
I set the milk on the table. I never had no time to cook it.
Plain turnip greens is mighty spindling eating for a man my size.
Cash is eating. About his head the print of his hat is sweated into his hair. His shirt is blotched with sweat. He has not washed his hands and arms.
You ought to took time. Where's Vardaman?
I go toward the door. I can't find him.
Here, sister, never mind about the fish. It'll save, I reckon. Come on and sit down.
I ain't minding it, I say. I'm going to milk before it sets in to rain. Pa helps himself and pushes the dish on. But he does not begin to eat. His hands are half closed on either side of his plate, his head bowed a little, his awry hair standing into the lamplight. He looks like right after the maul hits the steer and it no longer alive and don't yet know that it is dead. But Cash is eating, and he is too.
You better eat something.
He is looking at Pa.
Like Cash and me. You'll need it.
He rouses up, like a steer that's been kneeling in a pond and you run at it.
She would not begrudge me it.
When I am out of sight of the house, I go fast. The cow lows at the foot of the bluff. She nuzzles at me, snuffing, blowing her breath in a sweet, hot blast, through my dress, against my hot nakedness, moaning. You got to wait a little while. Then I'll tend to you. She follows me into the barn where I set the bucket down. She breathes into the bucket, moaning. I told you. You just got to wait, now. I got more to do than I can tend to. The barn is dark. When I pass, he kicks the wall a single blow. I go on. The broken plank is like a pale plank standing on end. Then I can see the slope, feel the air moving on my face again, slow, pale with lesser dark and with empty seeing, the pine clumps blotched up the tilted slope, secret and waiting. The cow in silhouette against the door nuzzles at the silhouette of the bucket, moaning. Then I pass the stall. I have almost passed it. I listen to it saying for a long time before it can say the word, and the listening part is afraid that there may not be time to say it. I feel my body, my bones and flesh beginning to part and open upon the alone, and the process of coming in alone is terrible. Leif. 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 I lean a little forward, one foot advanced with dead walking. I feel the darkness rushing past my breast, past the cow. I begin to rush upon the darkness, but the cow stops me and the darkness rushes on upon the sweet blast of her moaning breath, filled with wood and with silence. Vardaman. You, Vardaman. He comes out of the stall. You dern little sneak. You dern little sneak. He does not resist, the last of rushing darkness flees whistling away.
What? I ain't done nothing.
You dern little sneak. My hands shake him, hard. Maybe I couldn't stop them. I didn't know they could shake so hard. They shake both of us, shaking.
I never done it. I never touched them.
My hands stop shaking him, but I still hold him. What are you doing here? Why didn't you answer when I called you?
I ain't doing nothing.
You go on to the house and get your supper. He draws back. I hold him.
You quit now. You leave me be.
What were you doing down here? You didn't come down here to sneak after me.
I never. You quit, now. I didn't even know you was down here. You leave me be.
I hold him, leaning down to see his face, feel it with my eyes. He is about to cry. Go on, now. I done put supper on and I'll be there soon as a milk. You better go on before he eats everything up. I hope that team runs clean back to Jefferson.
He killed her.
He begins to cry. Hush.
She never hurt him and he come and killed her.
Hush. He struggles. I hold him. Hush.
He killed her.
The cow comes up behind us, moaning. I shake him again. You stop it, now. Right this minute. You're fixing to make yourself sick and then you can't go to town. You go on to the house and eat your supper.
I don't want no supper. I don't want to go to town.
We'll leave you here, then. Lessen you behave, we will leave you. Go on, now, before that old green-eating tub of guts eats everything up from you. He goes on, disappearing slowly into the hill. The crest, the trees, the roof of the house stand against the sky. The cow nuzzles at me, moaning. You'll just have to wait. What you got in you ain't nothing to what I got in me, even if you are a woman too. She follows me, moaning. Then the dead, hot, pale air breathes on my face again. He could fix it all right, if he just would. And he don't even know it. He could do everything for me if he just knowed it. The cow breathes upon my hips and back, her breath warm, sweet, stertorous, moaning. The sky lies flat down the slope, upon the secret dumps. Beyond the hill sheet lightning stains upward and fades. The dead air shapes the dead earth in the dead darkness, further away than seeing shapes the dead earth. It lies dead and warm upon me, touching me naked through my clothes. I said, you don't know what worry is. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether I am worrying or not. Whether I can or not. I don't know whether I can cry or not. I don't know whether I have tried to or not. I feel like a wet seed wild in the hot blind earth.
When they get it finished they are going to put her in it and then for a long time I couldn't say it. I saw the dark stand up and go whirling away and I said, "Are you going to nail her up in it, Cash? Cash? Cash?" I got shut up in the crib, the new door, it was too heavy for me, it went shut, I couldn't breathe because the row was breathing up all the air. I said, "Are you going to nail it shut, Cash? Nail it? Nail it?" Paul walks around. His shadow walks around, over Cash going up and down above the saw, at the bleeding plank. Dewey Dell said we will get some bananas. The train is behind the glass, red on the track. When it runs, the track shines on and off. Pa said flour and sugar and coffee cost so much. Because I am a country boy, because boys in town. Bicycles. Why do flour and sugar and coffee cost so much when he is a country boy?
Wouldn't you rather have some bananas instead?
Bananas are gone, eaten. Gone. When it runs on, the track shines again. Why ain't I a town boy, Pa? I said. God made me. I did not said to God to made me in the country. If he can make the train, why can't he make them all in the town because flour and sugar and coffee?
Wouldn't you rather have bananas?
He walks around. His shadow walks around. It was not her. I was there, looking. I saw. I thought it was her, but it was not. It was not my mother. She went away when the other one laid down in her bed and drew the quilt up. She went away. Did she go as far as town?
She went further than town.
Did all those rabbits and possums go further than town? God made the rabbits and possums. He made the train. Why must he make a different place for them to go if she is just like the rabbit? Paul walks around. His shadow does. The saw sounds like it is asleep. And so if Cash nails the box up, she is not a rabbit. And so if she is not a rabbit, I couldn't breathe in the crib and Cash is going to nail it up. And so if she lets him, it is not her. I know. I was there. I saw when it did not be her. I saw. They think it is and Cash is going to nail it up. It was not her because it was laying right yonder in the dirt. And now it's all chopped up. I chopped it up. It's laying in the kitchen in the bleeding pan, waiting to be cooked and ate. Then it wasn't and she was, and now it is and she wasn't. And tomorrow it will be cooked and ate and she will be him and Pa and Cash and Dewey Dell and there won't be anything in the box and so she can breathe. It was laying right yonder on the ground. I can get Vernon. He was there and he seen it, and with both of us it will be and then it will not be.
It was nigh to midnight and it had set into rain when he woke us. It had been a mistoutful night, with the storm making, a night when a fellow looks for most anything to happen before he can get the stock fed and himself to the house and supper ate and in bed with the rain starting, and when Peabody's team come up, lathered, with the broke harness dragging and the neck yoke betwixt the off critter's legs, Cora says,
It's Addie Bundren, she's gone at last.
Peabody might have been to one of a dozen houses hereabouts, I says. Besides, how do you know it's Peabody's team?
Well, ain't it? You hitch up now.
What for? If she is gone, we can't do nothing till morning. And it fixing to storm, too.
It's my duty, you put the team in.
But I wouldn't do it. It stands to reason they'd send for us if they needed us. You don't even know she's gone yet.
Why, don't you know that's Peabody's team? Do you claim it ain't? Well then.
But I wouldn't go. When folks wants a fellow, it's best to wait till they sends for him, I found.
It's my Christian duty. Will you stand between me and my Christian duty?
You can stay there all day tomorrow, if you want, I says. So when Cora waked me it had set into rain. Even while I was going to the door with the lamp and it shining on the glass so he could see I am coming, it kept on knocking. Not loud, but steady, like he might have gone to sleep thumping, but I never noticed how low down on the door the knocking was till I opened it and never seen nothing. I held the lamp up, with the rain sparkling across it and Cora back in the hall saying,
Who is it, Vernon?
But I couldn't see nobody at all at first until I looked down and around the door, lowering the lamp. He looked like a drownded puppy, in them overalls, without no hat, splashed up to his knees where he had walked them 4 miles in the mud. Well, I'll be derned, I says.
Who is it, Vernon?
He looked at me, his eyes round and black in the middle like when you throw a light in the owl's face.
You mind that air fish?
Come in the house, I says. What is it? Is your ma?
Vernon.
He stood kind of around behind the door, in the dark. The rain was blowing onto the lamp, hissing on it so I am scared every minute it'll break.
You was there. You seen it.
Then Cora come to the door.
You come right in out of the rain,
she says, pulling him in and him watching me. He looked just like a drownded puppy.
I told you it was happening. You go and hitch.
But he ain't said, I says. He looked at me, dripping onto the floor.
He's ruining the rug. You go get the team while I take him to the kitchen.
But he hung back, dripping, watching me with them eyes.
You was there. You seen it laying there. Cash is fixing to nail her up, and it was laying right there on the ground. You seen it. You seen the mark in the dirt. The rain never come up till after I was coming here. So we can get back in time.
I'd be darned if it didn't give me the creeps, even when I didn't know yet. But Cora did.
You get that team quick as you can. He's out of his head with grief and worry.
I'd be darned if it didn't give me the creeps. Now and then a fellow gets to thinking about all the sorrow and afflictions in this world, how it's liable to strike anywhere, like lightning. I reckon it does take a powerful trust in the Lord to guard a fellow, though sometimes I think that Cora's a mite overcautious, like she was trying to crowd the other folks away and get in closer than anybody else. But then, when something like this happens, I reckon she is right and you got to keep after it, and I reckon I am blessed in having a wife that ever strives for sanctifying and well-doing like she says I am. Now and then a fellow gets to thinking about it. Not often, though. Which is a good thing. For the Lord aimed for him to do and not to spend too much time thinking, because his brain it's like a piece of machinery, it won't stand a whole lot of racking. It's best when it all runs along the same, doing the day's work and not no one part used no more than needful. I have said and I say again, that's every living thing the matter with Darl, he just thinks by himself too much. Cora's right when she says all he needs is a wife to straighten him out. And when I think about that, I think that if nothing but being married will help a man, he's darn nigh hopeless. But I reckon Cora's right when she says the reason the Lord had to create women is because man don't know his own good when he sees it. When I come back to the house with the team, they was in the kitchen. She was dressed on top of her nightgown, with a shawl over her head and her umbrella and her Bible wrapped up in the oilcloth, and him sitting on a upturned bucket on the stove zinc where she had put him, dripping onto the floor.
I can't get nothing out of him except about a fish. It's a judgment on them. I see the hand of the Lord upon this boy for Anse Bundren's judgment and warning.
The rain never come up till after I left. I had done left. I was on the way. And so it was there in the dust. You seen it. Cash is fixing to nail her, but you seen it.
When we got there it was raining hard, and him sitting on the seat between us, wrapped up in Cora's shawl. He hadn't said nothing else, just sitting there with Cora holding the umbrella over him. Now and then Cora would stop singing long enough to say it's a judgment on Anse Bundren. May it show him the path of sin he is a-trotting. Then she would sing again, and him sitting there between us, leaning forward a little like the mules couldn't go fast enough to suit him.
It was laying right yonder, but the rain come up after I taken and left. So I can go and open the windows, because Cash ain't nailed her yet.
It was long past midnight when we drove the last nail, and almost dusk on when I got back home and taken the team out and got back in bed, with Cora's nightcap laying on the other pillow. And be darned if even then it wasn't like I could still hear Cora singing and feel that boy leaning forward between us like he was ahead of the mules, and still see Cash going up and down with that saw, and Anse standing there like a scarecrow, like he was a steer standing knee-deep in a pond and somebody come by and set the pond up on edge and he ain't missed it yet. It was nigh toward daybreak when we drove the last nail and toted it into the house, where she was laying on the bed with the window open and the rain blowing on her again. Twice he did it, and him so dead for sleep that Cora says his face looked like one of these here Christmas masts that had done been buried a while and then dug up, until at last they put her into it and nailed it down so he couldn't open the window on her no more. And the next morning they found him in his shirt tail, laying asleep on the floor like a felled steer, and the top of the box board clean full of holes and Cash's new auger broke off in the last one. When they taken the lid off they found that 2 of them had bored on into her face. If it's a judgment, it ain't right. Because the Lord's got more to do than that. He's bound to have. Because the only burden Anse Bundren's ever had is himself. And when folks talks him low, I think to myself he ain't that less of a man or he couldn't abhor himself this long. It ain't right. I be darned if it is. Because he said suffer little children to come unto me don't make it right, neither.
I have bore you what the Lord God sent me. I faced it without fear nor terror, because my faith was strong in the Lord, bolstering and sustaining me. If you have no son, it's because the Lord has decreed otherwise in his wisdom, and my life is and has ever been an open book to ear a man or woman among his creatures, because I trust in my God and my reward.
I reckon she's right. I reckon if there's e'er a man or woman anywhere that he could turn it all over to and go away with his mind at rest, it would be Cora. And I reckon she would make a few changes, no matter how he was running it, and I reckon they would be for man's good. Leastways, we would have to like them. Leastways, we might as well go on and make like we did.